Assalamu alaikum students, this is Fadan Mirza. We are discussing the central nervous system. In central nervous system, we basically deal with the part of your body where your spinal cord and your brain is involved. They basically make up your central nervous system. Together, they will basically are the controlling center for your thoughts, emotions, creativity, wisdom, memories, activities, behavior, reflexes. They are all controlled by your brain and the spinal cord. Track, the term track, wherever we use the term track, this basically means bundle of axons. They may originate from one point and they would extend to another point in the body. Central nervous system is having about 100 billion neurons. Adult brain mass is given as 1300 grams. Spinal cord is actually for reflexes, the quick, rapid reactions of most probably the most important ones here are the ones where your limb movement is controlled, where your limb movement is concerned. For example, the withdrawal reflex. If you touch something very hot, you just withdraw your hand rapidly without even consciously recognizing that your hand got pulled back. The same goes for hitting your toe somewhere on the road when you are walking. And for example, if you end up hitting a corner or a stone or rock, or probably within your home you end up hitting a table on your small toe, or the edge of the bed on your knee, or on the small toe, and or any part of your foot, you just withdraw your limb right away. So these are the reflexes controlled by your spinal cord. And when the signal is sent from the spinal cord to the brain, then you take conscious decisions. So there are pathways for sensory impulses to the brain, and pathway for motor nerve impulses are from the brain. So all the sensory information, it goes to the central nervous system, and the motor impulses, they come back from the nervous system, central nervous system, to other parts of the body. The central nervous system is basically, as I told you, just brain and spinal cord. Brain is having four different parts: cerebrum, diencephalon, brainstem, and cerebellum. The spinal cord is originating from medulla oblongata to the superior edge of lumbar to vertebra. The CNS is protected by connective tissue layers, which include your skull, which is the bone box in which your brain is encapsulated. And then there are meninges, the covering, which are called as a cranial and the spinal meninges. And then you have cerebrospinal fluid that cushions it. So you can see in this diagram the sagittal section of brain. Cerebrum is shown to you. You can see the folds in the cerebrum. You can see diencephalon. Diencephalon is present just below the cerebrum, and it includes thalamus, includes hypothalamus, includes pineal gland, which is a part of epithalamus. Then you have brainstem. Brainstem is towards the back side, the posterior side of your head. It includes the midbrain, it includes the pons, it includes medulla oblongata. Then you have cerebellum, which includes which includes this region which is present here. And then the brain gets connected. The brain stem get extended to your spinal cord, and the spinal cord goes into the vertebral column. The same can be seen in this cadaver section. This is the medulla oblongata. So you can see the medulla oblongata at the back of your head. It is extending to the spinal cord, and the spinal cord keeps crossing through the vertebral column. This is the posterior view. The first cervical vertebra is atlas. It is shown to you here. There is an enlargement called as cervical enlargement in within the where the spinal cord is crossing. Then there is another enlargement called as lumbar enlargement. So across the length, the entire vertical length of the spinal cord, there are two enlargements: the cervical enlargement in the cervical region and the lumbar enlargement in the lumbar region. Then by the time you reach to the second lumbar vertebra, the spinal cord, it ends here, and the cone-shaped region that's produced here is called as the conus medullaris. Then below the conus medullaris, you don't have the any part of the spinal cord being continued. The vertebral column continues, although to your sacrum and your coccyx. The nerves have gone out, and some more nerves will go out from here. The skeletal protection for brain and spinal cord comes from the skull and the vertebral foramina for the vertebra from the vertebra, which are stacked on one on top of the other in the vertebral column. Meninges are the coverings that are protecting your central nervous system. There are three meninges. They include the cranial, spinal meninges, and superficial to deep. They include the dura mater, arachnoid mater, and pia mater. These are the three main meninges which are present in your central nervous system. These are showed in this diagram. If you cut the frontal plane of your head, and you look at the sagittal sinus, so you can see the skull at the top. Below it, you see the parietal bone of the cranium. Then beneath it is the sagittal sinus. In here, you can see dura mater. Dura mater, it is followed by arachnoid mater, and the innermost is pia mater. And just beneath the pia mater, you have cerebral cortex. Within this, you can see the region of arachnoid villus and falx cerebri as well. This is spinal cord. The spinal cord shown posterior to anterior. The posterior region is this, where you have a median sulcus. There is a central canal in between from which the CSF just circulate. Then in the anterior side, there is an anterior median fissure. So at the anterior side, there is an anterior median fissure. At the posterior end, there is a median sulcus. If you go there, the gray matter and the white matter can be seen that the gray matter is in the inside and the white matter is on the outside. In the brain, it is opposite. In the brain, the white matter is inside and the gray matter is outside. In the spinal cord, it is this way. Then these are the nerves that are spinal nerves going out, and you can see the blood vessels here. The meninges can be seen. Pia mater is the innermost. Then you have arachnoid mater, the middle one, and then you have dura mater, the outer one. Then there are denticulate ligaments which are adhering the connective tissues to your spinal cord. And here you have subarachnoid space and the subdural space. Subarachnoid space is present between your pia mater and the arachnoid mater. The subdural space is present between the dura mater and the arachnoid mater. The dura mater is basically superficial most. It's the strongest meninge. It extends and separate portions of the brain. Falx cerebri separate the two cerebral hemisphere. Falx cerebelli separate the two cerebellum hemispheres, and tentorium cerebelli separates cerebrum from cerebellum. So these are the falx cerebri, falx cerebelli, and tentorium cerebelli are the connective tissue extensions which separate different parts of your brain. You know that cerebrum is in two hemispheres, the cerebellum is also in hemispheres, and cerebrum and cerebellum, they meet at a point and they need to be separate from one another. So that is by tentorium cerebelli. Dura mater of the spinal cord, as I already discussed, that it is the outermost one, and it is having epidural space, which include cushion of fat, which is involved in protection. Arachnoid mater is avascular. There are no blood vessels there. There are collagen fibers, some elastic fibers that surround both brain and spinal cord, and it contains interstitial fluid. The pia mater is innermost. It slightly is adhered to your central nervous system. It is having some elastic fibers and a lot of collagen. And the space, it is here, it is inside, and the thin space between arachnoid mater and pia mater contains the CSF. It also covers the blood vessels there. So these are the meninges of spinal nerves up to the point of exit from the spinal column. They are all covered in the same spinal meninges. There are denticulate ligaments, as I already discussed with you, how it adheres the connective tissue pia mater to your spinal cord, and it protects it against displacement. The blood flow to your brain is via internal carotid artery, which passes through your neck, and the vertebral arteries, which are going from your vertebra. The spinal cord is receiving the blood from intercostal and the lumbar arteries, and the blood is returned to the posterior intercostal and the lumbar veins. You can see here how the right carotid and the left carotid arteries, they are just going through the neck region to the head, and how they glow. The blood to the brain is basically about a lot of oxygen going there, a lot of glucose going there, because your brain cannot store glucose. It can't store glucose, so the glucose need to be sent every second, every moment to your brain. That's the basic fuel of your neurons. Blood flow to the brain, even for 1 to 2 minutes, can impair neural functions. For 4 minutes, it can cause permanent injury if brain supply is stopped. So as I told you that it can lead to, since glucose is not stored there, so low blood glucose can cause confusion, dizziness, convulsion, loss of consciousness. Then blood-brain barrier. Brain receives blood supply, but every cell of brain is not having a direct contact with your blood. So there's a blood-brain barrier which blood cannot cross. Why? So that it protects the harmful substances within the blood, so that they do not interfere with your brain function. So those substances, the chemicals and the pathogens, they cannot penetrate into the central nervous system. They can't cross the blood-brain barrier. It prevents the passage of fluid in exchange, free exchange as well, and only the solutes and you can say water only lipid soluble and water soluble substances that are allowed, they will be crossing the blood brain barrier. The anatomy includes cerebral arteries that divide to form capillaries. They are tight junctions sealed together in the endothelial cells, the CNS capillaries, and they surround the thick basement membrane. Cells called astrocytes, they are pressed against capillaries, and these are the ones which form the blood-brain barrier. CSF is about 80 to 150 ml of colorless liquid. It protects and nourishes your central nervous system. It helps against chemical and physical injuries. It acts as a shock absorber. It nourishes by replenishing the oxygen, glucose, and other chemicals, and continuously circulate within the cavities of the central nervous system. The CSF, it's a shock absorber, chemical protection, and with circulation, it allows that it keeps circulating. So here you can see posterior and anterior, the parts of the brain. There are the ventricles shown to you within the brain. Ventricles are the region where the CSF is circulating. So you can see there are regions which you can just go through this diagram, anterior to posterior. You can see in there are lateral ventricles. There is an intraventricular foramen, which is connecting these two. There's a third ventricle here. There's an aqueduct of midbrain called the cerebral aqueduct. This is a duct which passes from this region. And you can see the pons medulla oblongata and central canal here. If you go to the posterior end, you can see the fourth ventricle just placed at the base of the brain. And then there's a lateral aperture. And then there is a median aperture. So this is the right lateral view of the brain. CSF fills the ventricles, and it is located in each hemisphere of the lateral ventricles are in each hemisphere, separated by septum pellucidum. So septum pellucidum is the region that separate the your cerebral hemispheres. There's a third ventricle and fourth ventricle filled with CSF as well. Where is CSF produced? It is produced in the choroid plexus. It is in the walls of ventricles, these capillaries, and they are covered by cells called the ependymal cells that form the CSF from blood plasma from secretion. So keep in mind that ependymal cells are a type of neuroglial cells, supporting cells that form the CSF, and astrocytes are the neuroglial cells that are forming the blood-brain barrier. The circulation of CSF is shown to you here, that how it passes from one part of the your brain to another. So you have the CSF coming from the lateral ventricles, choroid plexus, entering the lateral ventricles through the ventricular foramina. It goes to the third ventricle, and from third ventricle it gets added here as well. Then from the cerebral aqueduct, it reaches the fourth ventricle, and fourth ventricle choroid plexus also produce for the CSF. So CSF is produced by lateral ventricle choroid plexus, third ventricle choroid plexus, and fourth ventricle choroid plexus. They all add up CSF there, and CSF from lateral ventricle to third to fourth ventricle, they pass through the interventricular foramina into the third ventricle, and through cerebral aqueduct to the fourth ventricle. Once in the fourth ventricle, from the lateral and the median aperture, it comes to the subarachnoid space, and from here it goes to the arachnoid villi of the dural venous sinuses, and from there the blood becomes the CSF becomes deoxygenated, and the venous blood goes there, and from heart and lung the blood becomes oxygenated, so it gets circulated once again. So this is how CSF comes into picture. We are discussing cerebrum now. This is the actual seat of intelligence that interprets sensory impulses and control muscular movements, and conscious activities are controlled here, and where may some of subconscious activities as well. The cerebral cortex is the gray matter on the outer side. This is the most important part, which actually is involved in problem solving skills and receiving and integrating incoming and outgoing information. White matter is on the inside. White matter is myelinated. Gray matter is nuclei deep within the white matter. Cerebral cortex is enlarged faster during embryonic development. It ends up forming some rolls and folds. Gyri are formed. Gyrus, these are the bulbs or the folds, and there are fissures which are deep grooves. So fissure and gyri need to be distinguished from one another. Gyri are just bulges or folds, whereas fissures are deep grooves. Longitudinal fissures separate the cerebrum into left and right hemispheres and connect them internally through the corpus callosum. Sulci are shallow fissures. So you need to distinguish between the shallow fissures, sulci, deep fissures, grooves, and the bulges and folds called as gyri. These are in this diagram, you can see the parts of your cerebrum. The frontal lobe is shown to you, the parietal lobes are shown to you, the occipital lobes are shown to you. And you can see the longitudinal fissures separating the parts of the frontal lobe. Then there's a precentral gyri here. The central sulcus separate the frontal lobe and the parietal lobe. There's a post-central gyrus here. And if you just go to the details of gyri and sulci, you can see gyrus are these folds, sulci are grooves, and then you have deep fissures which are going deep grooves, so shallow grooves and deep grooves. So again, this is a transverse view of a lateral view of the same. The cerebral white matter is having tracts which are myelinated axons. They communicate between regions of the central nervous system. Three basic type association tracts are between the gyri in the same hemisphere. Commissural tracts are from one gyri in one hemisphere to the corresponding gyri in the other hemisphere. Projection tracts are from cerebrum to lower parts of the central nervous system. There is a region called basal nuclei. Mass of cell bodies, nuclei are always mass of cell bodies. This is not a cell nucleus. Nuclei basically mean various cell bodies of neurons are in clusters here. They are lying side by side in the lateral to the thalamus called the globus pallidus and the putamen. Third is called as the caudate nucleus. The head is connected to the small tail by a long comma-shaped body. They receive information from the cerebral cortex and provide motor portion outputs. They control subconscious skeletal muscle activity. This is cerebrum. You can see it show to you. The blue region here is your cerebrum, how it functions. And this here is diagram showing to you diencephalon, the thalamus, the hypothalamus, the pineal gland. This is the cerebellum shown to you. And this is the brain stem, midbrain, pons, medulla oblongata, reticular formation. These are the parts of brain stem. This is the spinal cord shown to you. There's a limbic system part which is controlling the emotions of the body, and this limbic system is what you call as mera dil nahi cha raha. So that basically is your limbic system. So what is the limbic system doing? It controls behavior, memory, encircles the upper part of the brain stem and corpus callosum. It's having the ring of structures on the cerebrum and the floor of the encephalon. So it controls the involuntary aspects of behavior, intense pain, extreme pressure, rage, and fits of rage, affection, recognition of fear. So it's all your limbic system which helps you, which actually you are responding to a certain stimulus. The way, for example, if you like some kind of food, though it makes you feel happy, you have strong affection for your parents or someone in the family or friends, and you recognize fear as a you recognize threats. So it's all because of the limbic system that helps you in these coordination. The functional areas of cerebrum include sensory areas and the motor areas, as well as the association areas. Sensory areas receive sensory impulses, motor areas receive they initiate movement. Association areas are complex integrative functions for memory, reasoning, will, judgment, personality traits, intelligence, and these are all the association areas there. The sensory areas of both hemispheres are behind the central sulci, and there is a primary somatosensory area that receives touch impulses from and proprioception, pain, itching, tickle, thermal sensation. It is localized exactly the points where sensations originate. So you can actually feel, for example, if somebody touches the back of your hand, you know, or the back of your shoulder, you know that your back of shoulder is being touched because the primary somatosensory area in the brain representing that part of the body receive the impulses that it is being touched. The primary visual area receives impulses from the vision. It is having the access to your eye and the visual center. It's basically deals with the shape, color, movement of the visual stimulus. The primary auditory area is for sound and pitch and rhythm. The primary gustatory area is for taste. Primary olfactory area is for smell. This is it for now. Thank you so much.